in a moment. Today is the last day for eligible, registered North Carolinians to cast their ballot in this important election. Polls across the state are open until 7:30 p.m., and if you are in line at 7:30 p.m., you will be able to vote. Voters should go to their assigned polling place. To find your polling place, use the voter search tool on the State Board website, ncsbe.gov, and don't forget to bring your photo ID. Yesterday, we sent out a press release titled 10 Tips for Election Day Voters in North Carolina. Please share these tips with your audiences so we can have a smooth election day as well. If you haven't voted yet, please take time today to make your voice heard. As a reminder, all voters will be asked to show photo identification when they check in to vote. Most voters will simply show their driver's license, but many types of photo ID will be accepted. Go to bringitnc.gov for more information about the photo ID requirement and a full list of acceptable IDs. We also want to remind voters that if you forget your ID, poll workers must offer you a provisional ballot and the opportunity to either fill out an ID exception form explaining why you are unable to show photo ID, or return to your County Board of Elections office to show your photo ID before 5 p.m. on November 14th. No voter should be turned away from the polls for not having an ID with them. At this time, we are unaware of any disruptions or delays at polling places that may necessitate extending voting hours beyond 7:30 p.m. That's simply remarkable, considering more than 2,600 polling places opened statewide this morning. We will continue to monitor polling places statewide, and if necessary, we will call a State Board meeting to consider any voting extensions. At this time, we have not heard reports of any major incidents at any polling places. We also have not heard reports of long lines today. It is a good day to go vote. We have been addressing reports that the State Board's voter search tool on ncsbe.gov has been running a bit slow today. This is not unusual for election days when tens of thousands of people are accessing the search tool at the same time. We ask voters to be patient and wait for your information to load. Finally, we want to remind the public that they can watch results come in tonight after polls close on the State Board's elections result dashboard found at ncsbe.gov. We remind members of the media to read the press release, 9 Facts About the Vote Counting and Reporting Process in North Carolina. There are a few important things to remember about election night results. They are always unofficial in the days after the election. Bipartisan election officials in all 100 counties will ensure every eligible ballot is counted. They will audit and ultimately certify the results. This is called the canvass process, and it occurs after every election. For local contests, the county boards will certify results on November 15th. For all other contests, the State Board will certify final results on November 26th. The State Board anticipates that the unofficial results reported by the end of election night will include about 98% of all ballots cast in the election. Over the 10-day canvass period, provisional ballots and some absentee ballots will be counted and uploaded to the results dashboard. These ballots are required to be counted after Election Day by law, and North Carolina's election officials will follow that law. Election officials do not call elections. Projections are made by media and/or the candidates using unofficial results, typically based on exit polls or the vote difference and the number of votes yet to be counted in a contest. Election officials will go through the post-election canvass processes as required by law, no matter how close the contest. Stay tuned to the State Board for additional press releases, and we will send out a notice for any additional press conferences in the coming days. With that, we will take your questions. We'll start in the room first, and then we'll go to the phone or online, and remind those folks who are using the phone or online system to press 1 when they do ask their questions. So is there anyone in the room? You'll go to one of the mics, if you would, please.
Hi, thank you for doing this and the other press conferences leading up to today. Brittany Gibson from Politico. I just wanted to follow up on something you had mentioned at last week's press conference about when you expect to have your unofficial tabulations tonight. You mentioned, I believe, in 2020, it was about a little after 12:30 a.m. Where do you project tonight being? And with the caveat of course, you're not going to rush to beat last time's
So our official final upload in 2020 was 12:28 a.m. on that Wednesday morning, and so I have challenged everyone to let's meet that or do better than that. Now, we have to be, face reality of it. That's our goal, but there are a lot of votes to deal with once the polls close. With this election, new to our laws, we cannot tabulate and upload the early voting results at the close of polls like we've been able to do in the past. So those will not be released until after the polls close. The tabulators will be closed down and the results will be uploaded with the election night results as they come in. So at 7:30 p.m. we will release the absentee by mail results. And then we will just begin to gather the results from the election day polling sites. And being mindful that we do not modem results in North Carolina. So if you just factor in that if the polls are able to close at 7:30 p.m. because no one is in line, it's going to still take a solid hour or so before the results would be driven to the county board site. And we've got over 2,600 polling places that have to do that tonight. So the bulk of our results we anticipate would be probably between 9:30 to 11 p.m. And we'll address anything that's running slower than that. We'll also caution everyone that that's a large volume of data hitting our results dashboard at the same time. So just like we're experiencing some lag because of the interest in our voter search tool, we may be experiencing some lag in the results just because of the sheer volume of data that's going in and the interest that we're seeing in our results.
Thank you.
I'm
Yes,
Dina
ma'am.
with CBS 17. Thank you, guys. I have two questions. One, you said that thankfully no major issues reported yet this morning. If you guys have seen any issues at all, whether it be this morning or over early voting, what have those been? And second question being, we've been hearing that the damage from Helene in Western North Carolina thankfully isn't impacting the election so much. Is that the same that are you guys still seeing that this morning, that things are running smoothly there?
So again, no incidents to speak of. There were just, I think, 3, maybe 4 polling places that had some delay in getting going, but they turned no voter away. They went to their manual process or were able to move things along quickly. So, we feel like, knock on wood, that we are in very good shape. Obviously, there could be some sort of disruption. We've had accidents to happen near a polling place that's delayed traffic or, power outages or something like that might create a problem throughout the day. But with the good weather and the good planning and so forth, we're hopeful that we won't see any further disruptions that could cause any delay. And then in terms of the Helene affected counties, as we've reported out, we had a 57% turnout between absentee and early voting ballots for North Carolinians. And in the western part of our state, those Helene-affected counties actually outpaced the rest of North Carolina with about a 59% turnout. So as we are going into Election Day, we are finding that they were able to get their polling places open on time. And we did get those with 7 tents up and operational for places that had no facility to locate for locate voting in, and that's all gone smoothly too. So I think it's just a real testament to the hard work and preparation that these election officials have put in to making this election go smoothly, and also just a testament to our partners with State Emergency Management, DOT, the power companies, so many, North Carolina National Guard, so many people that I could identify who have helped to make today possible in those Helene-affected counties.
Thank you.
Hi, Karen.
Yes.
Sean
Hey.
Coffey, ABC 11. I also have a two-parter. Just understanding it's really early, wondering if there's any preliminary info about the number of ballots that have been cast in person today, through the first few hours at least. And then secondly, I know you touched on the process kind of longer term before the vote is ultimately certified, but what is sort of immediately after the polls close today the role that the BOE will play in kind of gathering the ballots physically, counting them up? Sort of, can you walk voters through what role you guys will play in kind of getting the count started?
Yeah, I don't have our 10 o'clock count, but we can try to get that. If not, we'll try to get that out before too long, where we gather from the counties the kind of turnout that they're seeing. In terms of, is your question about the role of the state board in the counting of ballots, or the
state and
county
county?
boards?
Yeah, I guess I think just for folks that are curious, what will sort of happen immediately once the polls close
Yeah.
to kind of get this process started.
So all ballots are counted at the local level. I do want to emphasize that. Those precinct officials that have been overseeing the voting sites, they are going to tabulate and sign off on those results tapes, and then they will be the ones who transport them securely back to the county boards of elections. That could mean they have a series of seals that are tamper-resistant seals, where they will have a flash drive and the actual paper ballots, because we are 100% paper state. So the tabulators have been used to be more efficient in our counting, but there was always a paper record. And all of that will be transported securely following chain of custody. These are bipartisan officials who have taken oaths to serve in those polling places and to carry out this work. They will deliver those to the county boards. The county boards will, take chain of custody of those materials. They will, verify that everything was there that was supposed to be transported. And then as they input those results into an air-gapped, meaning not connected to the internet, aggregation computer. The software is there to aggregate these results. They're going to check against the results tapes to make sure the right stick, flash drive came back to them, that the ballots that were cast are what's in those results files, and they will aggregate that. They will then save those results and do uploads periodically on new flash drives. They take that over to our secure state election information management system, which is where they're able to access the election night results. Anytime they do those uploads, they're using a new flash drive so that we have no cross, that again, they don't take anything from a networked computer back to an air-gapped computer. So that's for tonight, and then we'll go through reconciliation processes and sample hand-to-eye counts and review of eligibility and so forth as we go through the certification period.
Thanks, Karen.
David Hodges, WBTV in Charlotte. I was wondering if we could get a little bit more into the process of, let's hope there are no delays at any polling locations and you keep the track record you have right now. However, I think for most elections we have seen an issue with either some type of delay or a computer glitch. Can we really get it? Would you mind kind of really describing the process of, if there is an issue at a polling location, how the complaint would be formed, how the State Board of Elections gets together and ends up deciding whether or not to leave a precinct open later or close it when it's, excuse me, designed to?
Now, if you jinxed us, I'm calling you at 1 a.m. No, so the way that our law is written, if there is a delay that extends more than 15 minutes or more, then that is something that gets reported to us. I mean, really, the counties are very good about reporting any delays to us, but they help us to understand, at the 15-minute mark or greater, what were the circumstances. We also, one key thing that the state board always wants to know is, were any voters turned away? And so the situation that I mentioned this morning, the voters patiently waited in line. They were able to get processed and checked in, and we, they were able to vote without issue. So we did not have a delay or disruption in voting. And so that's what the state board weighs when they consider it. So the role that I have and General Counsel Cox, we will take that information to the board members, determine if a meeting needs to be called, and at this time there's not a situation. So let's just say that there were to be a traffic accident that blocks entry to a voting site today, then we would certainly work with that county to determine if it's such a situation that would require moving the polling place, or is it such a situation that there was just a delay in voting and perhaps the board needs to consider whether anyone was turned away or not. That's the real key, is whether anyone was kept from voting. Yes.
Good morning. Kurt Devine, CNN. Wondering if you can characterize the amount of mis or disinformation that you've seen this election cycle, and speak for a moment to whether the state board has a strategy for countering those types of falsehoods.
So, North Carolina elections, like most of our colleagues across the country, have certainly been subjected to some level of mis and disinformation. But what I think is really important is how we address that. And we have worked since 2019 on a campaign around the hashtag #YourVoteCountsNC. Efforts on social media, efforts on our website, efforts through press availability and press releases to inform North Carolinians about our processes in North Carolina, so that when they're presented with misinformation, they question that and know to go to trusted sources of information, like the state board, like our county boards, like vote.gov, and others that are trusted sources of information. We also have very transparent processes in North Carolina where citizens are our workers. 25,000 people are making today possible, and our voting sites operate. So when you know that there's so many people that are involved, that they are able to help, provide the truth, provide the facts. And similarly, we also are transparent in, our pre-election testing is open to the public. Our post-election audits are open to the public. The meetings that these bipartisan boards are having are open to the public. And so I think that we actually have not seen the degree of, what we would say are misinformation posts to any great extent larger than what we've seen in maybe other elections, and perhaps to some degree a little less, which I think really speaks to the efforts that we've put out there.
One specific follow-up is that we've seen federal authorities in recent days put out some specific statements about disinformation that they've identified. Has the state board heard from federal authorities on anything specific, or that type of disinformation that has actually touched upon North Carolina in some way?
We are in communication with our local, state, and federal partners that help us to monitor. We are stationed today with individuals who are ensuring that we are not subjected to cyber attacks or misinformation that could be of a domestic or foreign malign influence. And in our case, we have not been the target, knock on wood, that some of our colleagues in Pennsylvania, Georgia, and Arizona have been with AI false videos, but we are certainly monitoring in hopes that we would not be, and our federal authorities have kept us apprised of any efforts that directly target us. As a swing state, we are sometimes meshed into some of the mis and disinformation that many of us are subject to, but we are not at this point directly targeted. Yes, Dave.
Keep going. I just waited until election day to vote this morning. I have never received so many text messages and voicemails in my entire life. So to your point on transparency, would you mind kind of detailing for viewers, what is transparent and what is secret in the voting process so that people understand that?
So our voter rolls are public record, so that, I mean, certainly, I think, campaigners like that, but it is also, it's a way that we're transparent. It is not known how you voted. It is simply known that you participated in the election. And so this is, there's a transparency in that, so that, if you were not an eligible voter, you could be challenged. That is part of our processes in North Carolina, though we haven't seen anything of any significance there. But, there are ways that people in this day and age are able to access, they can access our voter records in terms of who's a registered voter. And obviously there are other lists where they can try to get as close a match to phone numbers and emails and things like that. And so, yes, my mailbox, my inbox, my text messages have been pretty rampant, even though I voted early on in the early voting period. And so, it's not necessarily generated from the state board. We did send out 2 text messages directly from the state board to voters who had signed up for the ballot track service to make sure that they knew the change in absentee law that requires absentee ballots to be delivered by 7:30 p.m. today, election day, and that there's no longer a grace period. And so that is the only text messaging that went out from the state board. Yes,
Hey,
Rusty.
Karen, good morning. Rusty Jacobs, WUNC. I think Paul mentioned this yesterday. The photo ID requirement is getting perhaps its biggest test, general presidential election. Just wondering if you have any indications so far during Election Day and from the early voting period that it is if not an impediment, a higher hurdle and a tougher hurdle to navigate for voters.
If Paul's heard otherwise, he's welcome to speak to it, but really and truly, the photo ID implementation has gone very smoothly. I think being able to communicate through our Bring It NC campaign, that we were able to help inform voters. The fact that there is the exception form in North Carolina, that if someone's unable to obtain ID, then they can indicate why, or if they have a religious objection, or if they have experienced a natural disaster, then that, and for those absentee voters, that they're unable to make a copy of their photo ID. Those are all exceptions permitted by law in North Carolina. And while we've seen some use of that, it's gone smoothly, and we're not finding at this point, we may learn differently as the day goes on, that there's not been a tremendous use of the exception form, because we do have a number of acceptable forms of ID. And so while most will present their driver's license, there's many options, military, veteran IDs, passport, many university, college, community college IDs are acceptable forms as well. So we're hopeful that we were able to help voters be prepared when they came to vote.
Hi, good morning. Grace Haba, WRAL. We just wanted to ask, we've heard from a number of people who have experienced some issues with delays with the mail-in ballots, specifically through UPS. So kind of a two-pronged question for you. First, what are we seeing statewide with mail-in ballot delays and any issues? And then secondly, what is the guarantee for voters who did follow the appropriate steps that their ballots will make it in time?
Let me double check that we've got the same information. Are you hearing delays through UPS or USPS?
UPS for individuals who are told, specifically through Wake County, one woman was told to mail hers through UPS, overnight it to make it in time. She was told it would get there by 10:30 this morning. It's still not there.
Okay. Obviously, we have the ballot track system that allows a voter to track their mailed ballot is through the U.S. Postal Service and the intelligent mail barcode. If, we did try to get the word out to voters that, the deadline is 7:30 p.m. election day today, and that they may have to take extra efforts, but, I can't speak for UPS or FedEx or any of the commercial delivery services. Generally, in my experience, they will let you know whether they can deliver truly overnight or if there's some other delay. So I would hope that they would have communicated that to the voter. But the reality is our law states very clearly now, it must be in the hands of the County Board of Elections by 7:30 p.m. Election day. So let's hope that the man in the brown truck gets that package to Wake County this afternoon. Yes.
Hey, Brian Anderson with Anderson Alerts. Thanks for the time and the accessibility. You said earlier that you estimate about 98% of votes tonight is what we will see. Can you share a breakdown of the time frame? What will we see at 7:30? What will we see at 8:30? What will we see at 9:30?
Sure. And 98% of the votes is pretty standard for North Carolina. It's just good. The timing of those being released is going to be a little different this election. So at 7:30 p.m. or when the polls close, the county boards will be able to release their absentee by mail ballots. As y'all, I think, are aware, we had over 240,000 ballots cast absentee by mail, so those will be the first results that we see. Following, at that point, at the close of polls, then the county boards can close their early voting tabulators, and then they'll remove the flash drive and be able to upload those into their counting software and aggregate and upload from that. So, at that, anticipating, we had over 400 early voting sites. So that's over 400 tabulators that also have to be shut down. And in some of these counties, we had over 20 and I believe in Wake County and over 30 in Mecklenburg County sites for early voting. So it's just going to take some time. So there will not be a precise point where we say it's X time on the clock and all early voting results are uploaded. They're just going to be entered in as they are able to get the machines closed down and the tabulation taken care of. They will potentially be doing that as election day results come in, and those are going to be sporadic too, because in order to, you've got to close down your polling site and then bring those results and the ballots back to the County Board of Elections. And having been a county elections director, I can tell you that my furthest precinct, it was on a good day a 45-minute drive to the County Board of Elections down a 2-lane winding mountain road. So we, even in metropolitan Wake County, we have some far outreaching areas that it'll still take time to get those in.
And then just regardless of what you say, regardless of what we report, there's going to be a segment of the population that is disappointed with the results tonight. There's going to be a subset of that will not accept the outcome and believe something was wrong or afoot. What is your message to those people who will inevitably say something went wrong?
Well, I hope that everyone will have patience in knowing that, tonight, we are going to put forward the results of at least, 4.5 million votes that have been cast, and potentially another million or more that will be cast today. That's not instant. And and we are always very clear that the results are unofficial on election night and are very conscientious about explaining these processes. We don't call results. That's, especially on election night, that's done by the media and the candidates. And it's North Carolina. We're likely to have some close contests. And so that's why tomorrow we'll release a report that tells everyone how many provisional ballots we need to research. And that may, to help people to realize, we've got a number of provisional ballots that could change the outcome of a very close election, especially when you get to a contest the size of perhaps a county commissioner race or something of that nature. And so what I would really encourage the public to do is to be aware of what the processes are. Come see how we do the sample hand-to-eye audit. Come and be a part of that certification meeting where the county board staff will put in front of their county members, this is how we got to our vote totals. This is how those bipartisan officials in those polling places, follow chain of custody procedures and so forth. This is, those will be the results where we show this is how many people checked in. That's our voter history process versus how many ballots were put into the machine. And those are usually exact matches or very close to exact, and have good reason why they might not have been. And so, I really do hope that the fact that we have bipartisan, transparent elections in North Carolina gives people the confidence. I feel that when you have this many people turning out to vote, that's an indication of their confidence in our election processes, and we'll get there for the results as well, I hope.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Helen Koster from Reuters, thank you for the opportunity. Can you speak to whether the state's election process has been impacted by the misinformation around non-citizen voting, and if so, what that looks like?
There have been a lot of questions, not only in North Carolina, but across our country about non-citizen voting, and I don't believe that it's been impactful to our processes. We have been able to address how we register individuals, the processes that we go through to ensure that eligible voters are on our rolls, and then being very specific to remind people that when they check in to vote, an individual is stating their name and their address. When they present themselves to vote, we look them up into our system, ensure that they are an eligible registered voter. They present photo ID, and that's just the process. It's the checks and balances that are within our system. We have not, for all the concern around it, we have not seen any number of challenges to someone's citizenship as being part of our roles. When we have had that suggested, our investigations team has checked into it. So we feel very confident that eligible North Carolinians have been able to cast their ballot.
And then a follow-up to that is you did mention that you haven't seen any significant challenges to voter rolls. Could you just elaborate on, I know you just touched on it, but what kind of challenges have you seen to date on voter eligibility challenges?
Paul, do you want? I don't even think we've had enough challenges to enumerate them, but yeah.
So there haven't been really any to speak of, or very few to speak of, actual challenges by voters to another voter at the polls. We do have a new period of time now after the election that absentee ballot challenges are allowed, so we'll see if those arise after the election. The county boards of elections do their own audit of the eligibility of their voters, and so if they find out, for example, that a voter cast a vote and then died, or a voter cast a ballot in early voting and then was convicted of a felony sentence, they become ineligible to vote in that election. And the county boards themselves will go through a challenge process when a voter is clearly ineligible based on official records. And so those are really most of the ones that we're dealing with right now. It's just the one-offs here and there where a voter became ineligible after casting a vote, or the handful of cases where a voter got confused and went to one county versus another, et cetera. Just those sort of administrative issues with making sure that the only eligible voters are casting ballots.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. I think we're ready to go to the phone or online questions.
We have one question from online, 13 News Now. Please go ahead.
Good morning. I was just going to ask if the early voting process would be considered, a success for you guys. Was there anything that changed this year that helped drive this massive turnout, and has it changed the way you are processing this election?
Well, I definitely think that we had a successful early voting period. That has been the most popular voting method for North Carolinians for most of our major election in recent years, and we continue to see the use of that voting method grow. So we prepared for that. I think, if we've learned anything, the pandemic actually helped us to be better prepared for large turnout of voting during the early voting period, where we learned how to do social distancing and spacing and realized that larger facilities, more parking, more voting booths, more check-in stations that were for social distancing purposes actually are just good logistical purposes. And we saw a lot of the counties still have a large number of early voting sites. These larger facilities were in use, and it really has made for a very smooth process in this election. We heard reports of some lines, but a lot of the counties had implemented weight tracking tools, and so voters were able to learn which site maybe had less of a line or no line, and took advantage of that. And it just overall was an excellent process, and I commend the county election officials for working through that and realizing, how to serve the voters during that early voting period. Are there any other questions online? Please press 1 if you have a question.
Savannah Wen with the 9th Street Journal. You're up.
Hello, thank you so much for doing this. So we know that the military, overseas, and provisional ballots are going to be added to the state vote total sometime during the 10-day canvass period. I was just wondering if you guys had any more specific dates about when these numbers will be released.
Specific dates about the military and overseas voters? Is that what the question was?
Provisionals too.
And provisionals too. Okay.
Yes, as well as the provisional ballots.
The military and U.S. citizens who are living abroad, we are able to count those ballots 9 days following the election. So those could still be considered at that point in time as part of the canvass process in the certification meeting that the county boards will hold on November 15th. The provisional ballots, the counties will assess those as they figure out how many they're dealing with and whether it requires research with the DMV to determine if someone did attempt to register and that just didn't process over to us, since that's the way most people do register to vote is through the DMV. So it'll be a matter of how much research do they have to do? Do they have a series of board meetings, or do they wait until the day before or the day of the certification meeting, which would be the typical time frame for most counties to hold their provisional board meetings. Next question.
Peter Charlemont with ABC News. You're up.
Hi. I just wanted to ask about turnout. I understand that the 10 a.m. numbers aren't available yet, but in terms of what we've seen since 7 a.m., is anything kind of above or below average? You mentioned not seeing major lines at some polling places.
I think, the reports that we have is that voting has just been steady. We had, everybody gets a kick out of the fact that I talk about the weather all the time, but weather impacts voting. And we have had good weather today. There was some fog in certain areas, and so that may have slowed some people getting to the polls first thing this morning. But I think as the day continues and we do 10 o'clock checks and a 4 o'clock check, we're going to find that it's been a steady day of voting. And when you consider that we're anticipating 1 million to 1.5 million people likely to vote today, and that's dispersed across more than 2,600 polling places, the likelihood of lines is not as great as when you have, over 4 million people going through the voting sites during the early voting period. So we fully anticipate to be able to quickly and efficiently serve those voters as they go to their election day polling places.
There are no more callers online.
Well, I think we're good to go. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, David, I missed you. Apologies.
No, it's absolutely fine. This might be a little bit more for the county boards, but I'm wondering if you could address it. Everyone is used to watching on Election Day, and you have someone like John King from CNN pointing to a board saying, oh, we got 50% of this county in, but how will the rest of these break? And sometimes different precincts and counties take longer to get to the place where they need to be counted. Could you explain how that process works, why it might take longer to get some votes counted in some parts of counties than others, what that delay is for.
So having been a county elections director and working as a field specialist for the counties, I'm very familiar with these processes. I think one thing we have to consider when a precinct might be running later than another, did they have voters in line at 7:30 p.m.? And those lines could be 20 or 30 voters easily, and that's not going to get processed in 5 or 10 minutes. So you've got to allow for that. You also, it may be a newer set of workers who are being more meticulous, aren't as familiar with the process, and so they're following every line of the book to make sure they get it right. Or it may just be that someone's that, particular anyway, even if they're a long-serving worker. So it might also be, depending on the county, depending on how many people they were able to put in as personnel. If they don't have, a large group of workers, then it's going to be more work for fewer people to do. So, there could be any number of reasons. No one should take that as being anything more than them upholding their oath to get it done right and to be accurate. I will say it probably grates on some nerves in the outside of elections world when you're looking, but our job and our effort is to not necessarily be quick. We want to be correct and we want to be accurate, and so that's what we're seeking when we're closing down the polls, when we're uploading the results, and when we're announcing those to the public.
Can I add something out there?
Yes.
I just add one other item. Just 1 second. I'll just.
Hold on, Brian.
Brian, give me 1 second. I just wanted to add to the question that, the size of the county, the population of the county could really play into this as well. In our large urban counties, there's only one secure computer where results are going to get uploaded. And so if you've got over 200 voting sites like Wake County does or Mecklenburg County does, over 100 like Guilford County does, it's going to take longer for all of those to get processed and put into the system because you have a single point of entry for all that at the county board office. So just the volume in the larger counties is going to make a difference, as well as in the rural counties that have a lot of space to cover to bring the results back. That's also going to take some time. So just want to make sure everybody's aware of that and patient with the results coming in.
That's a great point, Paul. Thank you. Okay, Brian, we have one online.
They went ahead and dropped, so we are no more callers online.
Then we are calling this complete, and we look forward to having a smooth election day. If you have not voted yet, please do so. Polls close at 7:30 p.m. tonight. Go to ncsbe.gov to use the voter search tool to look up your voter registration information, to locate your precinct polling location, and to see your sample ballot. Thank you, and have a great election day, everyone.